Okay, I'm gonna go live in about a minute. Want to give a chance to get people. Want to give people a chance to get in here. We got a couple of things to talk about tonight. We got the fights from the weekend. There were some good fights this weekend, and big finish in the UFC, record-breaking finish, and then some good fights over at Combate Global. I want to talk a couple different discussion topics, including Bozo Sean O'Malley, who can't decide on a hair color. All right, that's long enough. All right, welcome back to WMAC Now with your host, Chuck Stevenson. And welcome to the weekend recap for what was it, July 7th through the 9th. I'm going to talk about the weekend's fights, and we've got a couple of discussion topics. We're going to talk about, besides the fights for the weekend, we're going to talk about Sean O'Malley and his garbage opinions on the ladies' fights. And we're also going to talk about the importance of signature wins. Like, what is a signature win? How do you get one? And why they're important. So, something I want to talk about. But let's start where we always start. So, weekend recap. We'll start with Combate Global. So, first up, it says, okay, flyweight. I guess this was a flyweight bout. At flyweight, Violeta Mendoza defeated, the heck is her name? Andrea Philippa? What the heck is... Yeah, Andrea Philippa is what they advertised her as on the show. She got like a million names on Tapology. Anyway, Mendoza defeated her via TKO, 4 minutes, 52 seconds of the first round. Big debut for Violeta Mendoza. Climbed to 0-1. Philippa fell to 0-2. Going to need to see more before I can make a judgment really on either of these two ladies. But man, it was a nice finish. Just overwhelmed her basically. So nice job there for the Mexican Violeta Mendoza. This was a good one here at atomweight. Andrea Meneses defeated Maria Paz Silva via unanimous decision. Meneses climbed to 5-1. Paz Silva fell to 0-1. Really rough debut fight for Paz Silva as far as matchmaking goes. But I'll tell you what, she looked good in round one. I believe the judges all gave her round one. But yeah, I thought she did really well in round one. You know, Meneses was having a hard time with her length and reach. Excuse me. Paz Silva, you know, really good striker. Seems like a good striker, but which is no surprise because she's from Chile, and those Chilenas, they come in and they're heavy hitters and they're fast. So wasn't surprised by that. But Meneses showed her superior skill set, showed her well-roundedness, willing to take, being a striker herself, was willing to take Paz Silva to the ground again and again and work for ground and pound, look for submissions. Just all around, you know, it was the more experienced fighter, the more experienced MMA fighter beating the, you know, the debutante who had, they advertised her as having a background in kickboxing, said, you know, she had a career there before that and decided to move in MMA. Take from that what you will. I mean, that's what they always say when fighters are like making their debuts and stuff. They're like, oh, you know, they had this background. But it looked to be true from Paz Silva. She was doing good on the feet. It's just she kept getting taken down, and as she got taken down more, she was a little more wary on the feet. She was put in with someone who had a little bit too much more experience than her. I'd say, in Meneses. But Meneses, this is a good comeback fight for her. She just suffered her first loss in her last bout to Daniela Hernandez, where she got absolutely out wrestled, and came back and showed that, hey, she can fight on the ground too. And she's not afraid to take opponents down. So really nice showing there for Andrea Meneses. But I'd like to see more from Maria Paz Silva. Then in the co-main event, which I don't know what it is with Combate Global. Maybe it's because of the TV deal. It's got to be because of, their TV deals. For whatever reason, their co-main event comes after the main event. I don't know why. That's basically a post-lim. So I don't know how you can call that your co-main event when it happens after your main event. But anyway, co-main event, 110-pound catchweight bout, because this was on kind of short notice. Jade Geron there in the blue and white defeated Katie Perez via unanimous decision. All three judges had it 29-28. They all gave Perez the first round. So Geron climbed to 4-2. Perez fell to 4-5. I just posted my review for this about an hour and a half ago. So if you want to go check that out later, if you haven't yet, please do check it out. And I thought it was a good fight. Some good back and forth action. Definitely Perez got the better of Geron in the first round. When she had Geron mounted, I thought, man, Geron was in trouble. But Geron, managed to survive that and came back in the second and third round and beat basically all of Perez's takedowns from that point on and made her pay for it. And anytime they got separation, Geron was in control on the feet and just outworked her and, showed some improved takedown defense. Obviously, she's got a lot to work on still as far as her ground game goes. But she's young. She's only like 22 years old. Good showing from Perez. I'll tell you what, Katie Perez is one of those fighters. If she ends up with a really lopsided upside down record, I'm still going to tune in to watch her fight because her fights are fun. Her fights are can't miss. She's all action. Like, she's always trying to get something done. And she's always hunting for a finish. And she showed it in this one too. She never stopped working. She knew what she had to do. She knew she was getting outstruck on her feet, so she kept working for that takedown. She never gave up. So, she's always someone to tune into. Geron could be a star in the sport. With the right division, with the right backing, she has the potential. She has she definitely has the X factor, we'll say. Or the X factors. I mean, she has the looks. She's cute. She has the right style. Very fan-friendly, striking style, kickboxer, heavy-handed, throws a lot. I mean, just throws a lot on the feet. But she's got to work on the ground game, and she needs a big win. Like, she's got to get, a win that's going to really get people's attention. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But Geron coming out ahead of Perez. Looking forward to seeing what both of these ladies do next. But again, if you get time, go check out the fight review for this one later on. Then we had UFC 290, Volkanovski versus Rodriguez. Only had one ladies bout. It was on the prelims. And it was second? Somehow this was the second fastest fight of the night. Any other card, this would have been the fastest or shortest fight of the night. But 290 was just one of those nights where Denise Gomes getting a 20-second TKO on Yasmine Howagi ended up being the second fastest finish of the night. 20 seconds of the first round. Gomes come to 8-2. Howagi tasting defeat for the first time, falling to 10-1. Howagi, seems to be a bit of a slow starter, at least in the UFC. She seems to be a bit of a slow starter, and that was a problem because I don't understand this either. She just let someone she should have known to be a heavy hitter just walk straight up on her, throwing heavy hands. I don't understand it. Also, for as good as her offense is, Howagi is seriously lacking in defense. She got dropped in her last fight, which, hey, it happens. Fighters get dropped. But when you get knocked out in your next fight, it shows serious problems. She really needs to go back to the drawing board here, Howagi does, and really work on her defense. That's a problem. When you let someone just walk up on you and throw leather like that at the start of the fight, it's like, yo, you need to be on your feet. Why was she not on the balls of her feet as soon as the fight started? We know she's got footwork. Why wasn't she using it from the start? That was dumb. That was just dumb. Can't fault Gomes. Can't fault her. No fault found in Gomes in this fight. She came out here and did what she wanted to do. Got a big win on a big card. And hey, she set a new record, fastest finish in UFC strawweight history at 20 seconds. And that's not going to be beaten anytime soon. No way is that about to be beaten anytime soon. That's not how. So that is it for the weekend recap. Over in 12 minutes. Let's hit to the chat. Judy V, of course, in there. Easy E. Judy V says it's too hot in Arizona, but the heat is just getting started. I'm used to it though. It's been hot here too, but I know it's not nowhere near as hot as Arizona. Combate deciding to go with the Gucci. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it. I heard it was like when they first started with that, it was like really slippery. Easy E says instant CTE. You don't get instant CTE. The C stands for chronic. I hate that. Judy says, could it be Yasmine was too confident? It's possible. I don't know what was going on there. I mean, being too confident is a possibility. I just don't understand what was going on. I don't understand it at all. I mean, it was just dumb. Dumb. Just dumb. I don't get it. I don't. Anyway, that's it for your weekend recap. So I want to talk about some discussion topics. So first up, I want to talk, before I get into that, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't yet. But I want to talk about the importance of signature wins. Well, what's a signature win? If you think about it, every fighter you can think of, or you think of, great fighters, or not even necessarily great fighters, but good fighters, known fighters. They all have a signature win to their name. Now, what is a signature win? Oh, it could be, a big win. Could be a big win, the biggest of their career. It could just be big for that night. It could be the fight that stands out on any particular night. Could be a big upset. Doesn't have to be a big upset. You could be the favorite, and it could still end up being your signature win. But it's a fight that makes everybody think about it, or it's a fight that when people think of your name, they think of that fight. It can be, but is not limited to being, a highlight reel finish. It could be a big KO. It could be an extraordinary submission. It could be a come from behind knockout. It could be a come from behind submission. It could be a rare submission, twister, go-go plata, buggy choke, dog bar, inverted triangle, rare or unusual submissions. Doesn't necessarily have to be a highlight reel finish. It could be like one of those awesome back and forth fights that you just end up being the winner of. Like Zahn versus Joanna 1. Anytime people think of those two fighters, that fight is definitely going to be, if not the fight that people remember them for, it's going to be one of them. Because that was just an awesome back and forth fight. Great display of skill. Just a very memorable fight. Like, that's a great example of a signature win. It was Zahn's signature win. Like, that's going to be like one of the fights, if not the fight, that everyone thinks of when they think of her championship run. Both of her championship runs. And even for Joanna, in a loss, that's like one of her signature fights. But we're talking about wins. So for Zahn, that's like her signature win, or one of them. Or it could also be record breaking. It could be the first submission of that kind to land in your division or in your promotion or even in the sport. Or it could be a fast time, like fastest submission, fastest KO. It could be record breaking. Doesn't have to be, but it can be. Or like I said, it doesn't even necessarily have to be a big, important fight. It could just be a win that gets noticed. Like on ESPN Sports Center, they'll show highlights from the weekend. Like, you might have a really good fight, a really good win, and it might not have been record setting. It might not have been anything out of the ordinary, but it was enough that people remember it that they're going to put it on the highlights of Sports Center. So yeah, as long as it gets you noticed and it's memorable, that's going to be like an example of a signature win for you. Signature wins basically can be the maker of your career. Like once you get a signature win, people are going to start talking about you more, and it's going to come up in conversation more. When your manager is trying to get you fights or trying to build you up to get you a fight in a bigger promotion, that's going to be the win that they point you to, or they point, people to. They're trying to get sponsors. They're going to be like, here, check out this fight. This is her signature win. That's what, signature wins can do for you. They can get you more money. They can get you a better contract. They can get you signed to a better promotion. They can get you sponsors. It gets you noticed. It gets fans' attention. That's why signature wins are so important to a career. Now, you can go a whole career without having one big signature win, but it helps. I mean, you don't necessarily need a signature win, but it's really hard to make it big without one. So I compiled a short list of fighters and their signature wins, and one fighter who doesn't have one yet, but I think as soon as they get one, they're on the verge of a breakout. So let's talk about fighters with signature wins and what they are. Well, we just saw one this past weekend. Okay. Denise Gomes beating Yasmine via TKO in 20 seconds. Okay. This has signature win written all over it. It broke a record, 20 seconds, fastest finish in her division's history. Beat an undefeated fighter basically gave a fighter their first L. People always remember that, like who was their first loss, or so and so handed such and such their first loss. That's always remembered. And she did both of that in one night. And it was on one of the biggest events of the year, freaking giant pay-per-view with two title fights on it. And it was on the prelims on ABC. Now, if you're not in the US, ABC is one of the big broadcast networks. That means anybody can watch it from anywhere. You don't need cable. You don't need satellite. All you need is one of those rinky-dink antennas, and you can get ABC. Fights on network TV get more views than the pay-per-views. So she had a ton of people watching, like probably several million people saw her land a 20-second knockout. People are going to be talking about this win for the rest of Denise Gomes' career. She could fall off of the earth after this. I mean, her career could take a nosedive after this win, and people are still going to talk about it. No one's going to remember this, or no one's going to forget this win. It's unfortunate for Yasmine. Howgie, she ended up on the wrong side of it, but every signature win has someone who winds up on the bad side of it. But this is Denise Gomes' signature win. I mean, she might have another win that people would say, well, that's her signature win. It's going to be hard to beat this one. I mean, a 20-second KO over an undefeated fighter on network TV, it's going to be hard to top this. Here's another example of a great signature win. Angela Lee's twister submission over Natalie Hills in one championship. This was such a signature win that they still show highlights of it today. One championship shows the highlights of this submission at least once a month to this day. Because, I mean, and the words say it all. Ultra rare twister submission. It's a hard submission to pull off. It's even harder in MMA. It's hard to pull off in grappling. It's even harder in MMA. That's why it's so rare. And as far as I know, she's the only woman to pull this off. If not the only, she was at least the first woman in MMA to pull this off. It was huge at the time. I mean, it was everywhere. You couldn't go on MMA sites without seeing either pictures or a video of this submission when it happened. Like this submission, like Angela Lee was already pretty big, or she was already, won championships, chosen star. But when she landed this twister submission, she became their chosen one. Like if she wasn't already, this definitely made her their chosen one. I mean, she was only 2-0 at the time, was Angela Lee. Natalie Hills was 2-2. So this is only Angela Lee's third pro fight. And a few fights later, she ended up fighting for the inaugural championship. Everybody knew who Angela Lee was because of this fight. And everybody still remembers it, and One Championship still promotes it. The definition of a signature win. Here's another one. Jenny Juan or Zenny Juan with a Go-Go Plata submission. This was over Aprilosenio at One Championship back in 2016. This was Zenny's fifth fight at the time. She was undefeated at 4-0. And was 3-0 in One Championship. This is another super rare submission. You do not see these every day. One of the only other ones I can think of was Nick Diaz over Takanori Gomi in Pride, what was it, 33? Like everybody remembers Nick Diaz getting a go-go plata on Takanori Gomi. But this for Zeni Juan, this was what got everyone's attention, was a woman getting a go-go plata in MMA. I don't think anyone's gotten a go-go plata since then. At least not in the women's divisions, they haven't. I certainly don't remember anyone else doing it. I mean, this was the one that got, like, everyone noticed Zeni Juan after this. This is another one. Like, it got one championship, put this, the highlights of this everywhere. I mean, just everywhere you were seeing this submission out there. And it ended up earning her a title fight against Angela Lee. Now, she honestly wasn't ready for that title shot at the time, and she was undersized. And it started, honestly, like, this started what, a 5-fight losing streak for her after this. Like, she lost to Lee and then lost 4 more straight fights. She's now started back on a winning track. She picked up a win late last year and picked up a win this year with an Imanari choke of all things. So Zeni Juan is still out there hitting really odd, rare submissions, but this was the signature win for her, and it got her a title shot. So those are a list of signature wins. Now, here's a fighter that I think could be on the verge of a breakout, but she's lacking that signature win. I'm talking about the Princess, Jade Geron, currently fighting in Combate Global. She made her pro debut in MMA in Bellator after kickboxing for them. Actually gave her opponent their signature win in MMA in the one of the rarest submissions ever in MMA. You know, got stuck in that scorpion crunch. And then lost her Combate Global debut after that because they basically used her to give one of their favorite fighters like a recovery win, a comeback fight. But Geron now, she's won 4 straight, but none of those wins truly like stand out. Like, she doesn't have a finish yet. Not that she necessarily needs a finish, but none of those fights that she's had since, you know, those 4 wins are really like going to make anyone stand up and truly take notice. Like, I feel that she could be on the verge. I mean, she has a lot of great things going for her. She has looks, you know, she's attractive. She's pretty, she's blonde, blue eyes. She's got the looks going for her. She has a very fan-friendly style, kickboxing, heavy-handed, throws combinations like crazy. Loves throwing combinations. So she has a lot going for her. But right now, she's just lacking that signature win. You know, the win, her last fight over Irene Cabello Rivera, had Rivera not been coming off of a long layoff, that probably would have been a very good, like a much better win for her. You know, Rivera's fought all over the world. She's fought some big names, but she was coming off of a long layoff, and so it didn't, you know, really do much for Jade other than just add to that winning record. Because, I mean, she beat the crap out of Irene Cabello Rivera. I mean, beat the snot out of her. Bloodied her all up. I mean, it was that close to being that signature win, but it just not quite. And she has a really good win over Katie Perez this past weekend. Overcomes some adversity to come back, but it's just missing something. Like she needs the right matchup to really get her over that hump. Either she needs a big finish or she needs to beat someone a little bit more notable. Just needs something. Like she doesn't have a win that when you look at her record yet is going to stand out over the others. Just got to get over that hump. If she can get that signature win, I think she could be, a potential star. She's small, so she might not ever make it in the UFC, but she could definitely do well outside the UFC and make some money, I think, and be like one of those fighters who people talk about, even though she's not in the UFC. Like she could be one of those fighters, that people talk about in spite of not being in the UFC. She just needs that signature win. If she can just get that, I think she could be a breakthrough fighter. She's also got to work on her ground game still, but she's shown some improvement in that department. So those are my thoughts on signature wins and why they're important. Next topic I want to talk about. This bozo, Sean O'Malley. Recently, what was it? Late last month, talked about women's divisions and just some bad takes all around. Just bad takes. Just all around. And we'll go to, this is from MMAfighting.com. It says, Sean O'Malley questions whether the UFC should create a separate promotion just for women. This is written by Jed Mishu. It says, Sean O'Malley has some thoughts about women's MMA. On a recent episode of his Timbo Sugar Show podcast, O'Malley was shooting the breeze with his coach, Tim Welch, and two friends when, for some reason, Welch brought up an old, since-deleted Islam Makhachev tweet proclaiming that this is not a women's sport. Yeah. I'm not a fan of Makhachev either. This got O'Malley's wheels turning, leading him to suggest this thought experiment. What if there was a WUFC, Sean O'Malley said? What if they had their own program? Would it last? Would they be able to sell pay-per-views? Would they be able to sell out arenas? I'm just asking. What if it was the WUFC? It's still the UFC. It's still Dana. It's still the UFC pushing these fights and promoting them. Would it last? Blah, blah, blah. It basically, O'Malley suggests that women may not be as entertaining as their male counterparts. We're not saying they're bad, Sean O'Malley explained. We're talking from a pure entertainment point of view. Look at the WNBA. Look at the NBA. There's a few girl fights that are very entertaining. There is a few. WNBA, WUFC, I'd like it. I think it'd be interesting. I'm not even going to bother reading this. Sean O'Malley's a bozo. Okay. I'm so sick and tired of this tired NBA, WNBA comparison. For one thing, MMA is not a team sport. Okay. And I see this all the time on the forums. Well, you don't see the WNBA taking a break at halftime to have a WNBA game. MMA is not a team sport. MMA is an individual sport made up of individual matches. The product itself is the entire fight card, not individual fights. The product itself is a bunch of individual fights making up an entire fight card, okay? The NBA, WNBA comparison is garbage because there is zero audience for the WNBA, whereas the UFC has defended the women's fights time and again, saying there is definitely an audience. Listen, if the UFC didn't think there were, they'd have dumped it. They'd have dumped it. Hell, if the UFC didn't think there was an audience for it, they never would have brought it in. Dana White was on record saying years ago, there will never be women's fights in the UFC. And then he brought them in because he saw the potential. It took a big star in the making, Ronda Rousey, to convince him, but it helped him see the potential. And then since then, what have they done? they added what? 2 other divisions. They started bantamweight, then they added strawweight. Then they finally added flyweight in between. I'm not going to go into featherweight. It's not a real division. If the UFC didn't think it was drawing an audience, they'd have gotten rid of it. The UFC only cares about one thing: making money. This talks more than anything. If the UFC didn't see money earning potential in the women, they'd have dropped them. Do you think the UFC cares about, it would create political backlash? UFC doesn't care about that. Dana White slapped his wife on video and is still there. You think they care about bad political backlash? No. All they care about is this. And to say, whoa, only a few of them are exciting. Well, guess what? More and more, we're seeing a lot of boring men's fights. A lot of them. The UFC keeps adding more and more events. And guess what? The men's fights always outnumber the women. And guess what? The boring fights are outnumbering the good fights. No one says, well, they should just put all those scrubs in their own separate show. Here's an idea. Speaking of that, putting all the scrubs on their own show, how about we put these Dana White Contender Series can crushers, like OMalley was for several years? How about we put all of them onto their own separate show? And we can call it the Dana White Contender Series Can Crusher Show. How would people like that? I don't think they would. Yeah, the NBA WNBA comparison. It's so tired. It's so bad too. Like, the women's MMA haters need to get a better argument because it is terrible. Also, why does anybody listen to what Sean O'Malley has to say? I just don't get it. This man can't decide on a hair color. Why does anybody take him seriously? Also, here's my biggest thing about Sean O'Malley. Why does anybody want to hear what this guy has to say about women in general? The man's a cuck. He is a self-admitted cuck. While this guy's getting stoned and talking on his podcast, his girlfriend is out there getting finished off by other dudes. By his own admission, this man is a self-admitted cuck. Why do I want to hear about his opinions on women? Even if it's about women's MMA, I don't want to hear a word from him. I can't take anything this guy says seriously after him coming out and admitting that he's a cuck. Like, this guy is the ultimate clown. Multicolored hair, multicolored tattoos all over, face tattoos, and his girlfriend's out getting polished off by other dudes, by complete strangers, while he's sitting getting high and doing his podcast. I just don't outside of the cage, I do not understand this dude's appeal at all. I just don't get it. I'll never get it. And maybe I'm showing my age here. Hey, I'm 38. I'll be 39 this year. You know, I'm like one of these older millennials. I'm not a younger millennial, and I'm certainly not Gen Z. That seems to be who this dude appeals to, but I just don't get it. I've never gotten this dude's appeal outside of the cage, but he's very popular, and I just don't understand it. I'll never understand it. Again, maybe I'm getting old, but I see a lot of fighters his age that have a lot more appeal than this dude. Inside the cage, he's a good fighter. It took me a long time. He had to really show up and show out for me to admit that, okay, this dude can actually fight. Because he was crushing a lot of cans in the beginning and getting fights on pay-per-view that he didn't deserve. But I can admit he's a good fighter. And he might have what it takes to beat Aljamain Sterling. Might. But outside the cage, I do not get it. I just don't. Cuck O'Malley is not someone to be taken seriously on his opinions on anything outside of the cage. When he sits outside the cage, he is not to be taken seriously by anyone. I'm sorry. All right, that's the discussion topics. Got a bunch of chats. All the way back here. Easy E says Holly Holm versus Ronda Rousey was Holm's defining moment. Unless you really follow boxing like I do, no one really knew who Holly was until that. Not many hardcore boxing fans. Well, yeah, that was obviously Holly Holm is still getting by on that win. That win earned her so much good karma, so much good faith that she's still getting main events when she's boring. Like she's had one exciting finish since that fight, and it was against Betchko Hea. Other than that, she's been absolutely boring. But because of that signature win, that earned her so much good faith that they want her to main event. And yeah, no, outside the fans of women's boxing, no one really knew or cared about Holly Holm. I feel bad for her because, man, she was one of those fighters that was carrying, women's boxing on her shoulders for a while. And there is no interest for it outside of that. And Judy V says, yeah, when Whaley disfigured Joanna. Yeah, everyone's going to remember that for a long time. Judy V says, when Rousey said in an interview, Holly thinks she's going to knock me out with a head kick. Oh, no. Yet Holly did just that. Yeah, there was so much around that fight that just made it like it was huge. It was explosive. Nunes versus Cyborg. That's one of Nunes' signature wins. Like she has a couple signature wins, and that's one of them for sure. Got to be pretty careless to get caught in a twister, like really careless. Well, Natalie Hills wasn't that good of a fighter. She was a Muay Thai fighter with no real ground game. Easy says, Judy V, it's a good one. I thought Cyborg was going to end Nunes, to be honest. I was shocked. Cyborg fought a very poor fight, though. When you stand and bang like that, it's 50-50 at that point. Yeah. Easy E says she should go to one championship. Strikers heaven over there. I don't think anybody should be going to one championship right now. Honestly, I know you're talking about Jade Geron. I don't think anybody should be going over there until they start putting on more events. They have so many fighters over there that are just, absolutely sidelined without fights. That if I were a fighter, unless they were giving me like a monthly stipend that I know they give to some fighters, I would recommend against signing with one for a lot of fighters right now. Easy E says, I think Sean should stick to fighting. Business doesn't seem to be a strong suit. But I don't think, clearly he shouldn't be running an MMA promotion. But that dude makes a lot of money outside of fighting. Leave that to WME in Denver. Actual people who know how to make money. I don't expect much from a pothead, though. Yeah, but I guess his podcast makes a ton of money. Judy V had to look up the word cuck. Yeah, I might end up getting, this stream might get demonetized because I use the word so much. And Judy V there said a bunch really, yeah. I don't understand it, but it is becoming very prevalent in our society more and more. It's sad and pathetic, really. I mean, I'm a single guy. I haven't had a steady girlfriend for a long time. There is no way I'd be letting knowingly let some other dude be pounding my girlfriend out and just giving her permission. Yeah, go ahead out. And they always come up with some BS like, oh, a strong man is confident in their relationship. It's like, no. Nope. Relationships are relationships for a reason. All right, so that's it for tonight. I wasn't going to make it a long stream, of course. Those are my thoughts. It was a good weekend of fights. There was a bunch of other fights I didn't even get a chance to watch yet. Like I want to watch that LFA title fight, that interim title fight, see if it was any good. But the fights that I did watch were good. The Combate fights were good for, Combate. Had a record-breaking UFC fight. Not the result I particularly wanted, but it was a good result. Good finish. So that is it for tonight. So before I go, just a final reminder, please hit that like button. It draws people to the stream. Even after it ends, it gets us going in the algorithm. If you haven't yet, please, if you like the channel, think about subscribing. He says, Holm or Breno Silva? Well, we'll talk about that Thursday night. I'm trying to get back into the rhythm of doing more live streams. So we'll try to do the WMMA report on Thursday night. But until next time, thank you for tuning in to WMMA Now, the best, most complete women's mixed martial arts dedicated platform on YouTube. Everyone have a good night. We'll see you next time.